No, you can't sign that.
What are you doing? Saving you from a huge mistake.
Saving me. A choice that would destroy everything. You will regret crossing me. I have the power now.
This can't be true. It is, every word. My whole life has been a lie. The truth was always there.
My daughter-in-law slapped my hand so hard, it knocked my old wedding ring against the marble hotel desk. The lobby went silent. Guests in designer coats stared like I was some confused old man who had wandered in from the street. My son stood 10 feet away, eyes on the floor pretending he didn't know me. Then my daughter-in-law leaned close and whispered, "This place doesn't belong to people like you anymore." I was about to walk away with what dignity I had left until the CEO asked for my file. And when he read the first page, his face went completely pale. Before I tell you what was in that file, please, like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments if family has ever made you feel invisible. Also, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. After Grace died, the house became too quiet. People think grief is loud. They imagine crying, screaming, falling apart in front of a coffin. But the kind of grief that stayed with me was quieter than that. It lived in the second coffee cup I still reached for every morning. It sat in the empty chair across from mine at the kitchen table. It waited for me in the hallway every time I came home and forgot, just for one foolish second, that nobody would call out, "Ethan, is that you?" My name is Ethan Robinson. I was 68 years old when my own son stood in a luxury hotel lobby and let his wife humiliate me like a stranger. Before all that happened, I lived a simple life in Cleveland, Ohio. A small brick house, a narrow front porch, 2 rocking chairs, though only one had been used for the past 4 years. I had spent most of my adult life as an elementary school principal, the kind who remembered children's birthdays and kept extra granola bars in my desk drawer for students who came to school hungry. I never thought of myself as an important man. Grace used to say that was both my blessing and my problem. "You never know when to stand in your own light," she would tell me. And I would laugh and say, "That's because you shine enough for both of us." Grace was the dreamer. I was the steady hand. When we were young, she could look at an empty lot and see a building full of warmth. She could look at a tired traveler and see a person who needed dignity more than luxury. She believed a hotel should be more than beds, chandeliers, and polished floors. She believed it could be a shelter for people who had run out of places to be treated kindly. That was how Robinson Grand began, not as a grand hotel. Not at first. It started with a small building, a stubborn mortgage, and 2 people who thought hospitality meant looking someone in the eye and making them feel human again. Grace handled the guests. I handled the books at night after school. On weekends, I painted walls, fixed faucets, carried luggage, and brewed coffee in the lobby before sunrise. Years later, after investors came in and the business expanded, Grace and I stepped back from daily operations. We were never flashy people. We did not need our names on walls or our faces in magazines. Grace said the work mattered more than the applause. But even after we stepped away, she kept certain papers locked away, just in case, she would say. I never liked those words. Just in case meant she was afraid of something I could not see yet. Our only son, Caleb, grew up running through those hotel hallways. He used to sleep behind the front desk during school breaks, curled up with a comic book while Grace checked in guests. He was a sweet boy then, sensitive, a little shy. He would help elderly guests carry bags bigger than his own body and glow when they called him polite. I believed he had Grace's heart. Maybe that was why it took me so long to admit he had changed. Caleb grew into a handsome man, smooth-talking and ambitious. At first, I was proud of that. A father wants his child to walk taller than he did. I wanted Caleb to have opportunities I never had. I wanted him to feel confident in rooms where men in expensive suits shook hands and made decisions. But ambition, if it is not tied to gratitude, can rot a person from the inside. After he married Rachel, the changes came faster. Rachel Robinson was beautiful in a sharp way. Perfect hair, perfect nails, perfect smile when important people were watching. She had worked her way into the event world and knew how to make wealthy people feel wealthier. She admired Polish status influence and anything that looked expensive under soft lighting. She did not admire me. At first, she hid it behind polite comments. "Oh, Ethan, you're still wearing that old jacket? That's sweet." Then it became sharper. "Caleb, maybe your father shouldn't come to the donor dinner. It's a very specific crowd." Then colder. "Your dad doesn't understand how things work now." Caleb would shift uncomfortably when she said those things. In the beginning, he would tell her to stop. Later, he only gave me a tired look, as if my presence made his life difficult. I tried to tell myself it was normal. Every family changes after marriage. Every son grows into his own life. Every old father has to learn when to step back. But stepping back is different from being pushed out. After Grace died, Caleb visited less. Phone calls became shorter. Holidays became excuses. He stopped asking how I was sleeping. Stopped asking if I needed help with the gutters, the car, the taxes. When he did call, it was usually about documents. "Dad, do you remember where Mom kept the old trust papers? Dad, did you ever sign anything with Samuel Price after Mom passed? Dad, are you sure you don't want me handling more of this? It's a lot for someone your age." Someone your age. Those 3 words carry a poison only older people understand. They sound like concern, but sometimes they mean, "You are becoming inconvenient." I always answered carefully. Grace had taught me that kindness did not mean carelessness. Our longtime attorney, Samuel Price, had also warned me after her funeral. "Ethan," he said, sitting across from me in his downtown office, "Grace was a loving woman, but she was not naive. She made sure certain protections stayed in place. If anyone pressures you to sign anything involving Robinson Grand, call me first." I had chuckled sadly. "Samuel Caleb is my son." His face softened. "I know. Call me anyway." I did not understand then how much love can blind a parent. Then one Thursday afternoon, Caleb called. His voice was warmer than it had been in months. "Dad," he said, "I want you to come to Robinson Grand next week." I stood in my kitchen with the phone pressed against my ear, looking at Grace's chair. "Robinson Grand?" I asked. "Yes, there's a major partnership event. Bradford Hospitality is considering a management agreement. It's a big deal." I waited for the part where he explained why I was needed for business. Instead, his tone softened. "I thought maybe you should be there. For Mom. For the family legacy." Family legacy. Those words reached a place in me I had tried to keep guarded. "You want me there?" I asked. There was a slight pause. So small, most people would not have noticed. "Of course," Caleb said. "You're my father." I closed my eyes. For months, I had told myself I did not need an apology. But when your child offers even a crumb of tenderness, your heart can mistake it for a feast. "I'll come," I said. "Great," Caleb replied quickly. "Rachel will be coordinating everything. Just check in at the front desk when you arrive. Will you meet me there?" Another pause. "I'll be around. It'll be busy, but yes, we'll talk." After we hung up, I stayed in the kitchen for a long time. I imagined Caleb taking my arm and walking me through the lobby. I imagined Rachel being polite, maybe even kind. I imagined standing beneath the old chandelier with my son and remembering Grace together. I imagined foolishly that maybe this was the beginning of healing. That evening, I opened the cedar box I kept in my bedroom closet. Inside were Grace's letters, her silk scarf, the pocket watch she had given me on our 30th anniversary, and a thick envelope Samuel had insisted I keep safe. I did not plan to use it. I barely even knew why I pulled it out. Maybe some part of me heard Grace's voice, just in case. I placed the envelope on my dresser beside my church shoes and my navy suit. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Grace's photograph. "He wants me there," I whispered. Her smile in the picture did not change, of course. But in the quiet of that room, I wanted to believe she was telling me to go. I wanted to believe my son had remembered who I was. I did not yet know. Caleb had not invited me because he missed me. He had invited me because he needed me seen. Not honored, not welcomed. Seen. Seen as confused. Seen as emotional. Seen as a problem. And by the time I understood that my hand would already be stinging against the marble desk of the Hotel Grace, and I had built from nothing. The morning I left for Robinson Grand, I dressed slowly. That may sound like a small thing, but when you are older, dressing for an emotional day is not just about clothes. It is about armor. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, wearing the navy suit Grace always loved. It was not new. The fabric had softened at the elbows, and the jacket fit a little looser than it used to. But Grace used to say that suit made me look like a man who could be trusted with somebody's secrets. I smiled at that memory, then looked away before it broke me. On the dresser beside me sat 3 things: Grace's pocket watch, an old photograph, and the envelope from Samuel Price. The photograph had been taken nearly 30 years earlier. Grace and I stood in front of a half-finished building, both of us younger, thinner, and too tired to hide it. There was paint on my sleeve. Grace had a scarf tied around her hair. Behind us, the sign was still temporary, just black letters on white wood: Robinson House. Not Robinson Grand, not yet. Back then, there was nothing grand about it except Grace's faith. She had found the building after months of searching. It sat near a medical district, close enough to hospitals that families often came into the nearby diner looking exhausted, frightened, and short on money. Grace noticed things like that. She noticed the woman sleeping upright in a chair because she could not afford another hotel night while her husband recovered from surgery. She noticed the grandfather counting dollar bills at a vending machine. She noticed the nurse crying in her car after a double shift. One night she came home and said, "Ethan, people need a place that doesn't make them feel ashamed for needing help." I looked up from grading school reports. "Are we opening a hotel or a mission?" She put both hands on the table and smiled. "Maybe the best ones are both." That was Grace. She could turn a business plan into a moral calling. I helped because I loved her, but also because I believed her. During the day, I served children and teachers. At night, I served strangers beside my wife. We did not have much money. We borrowed, scraped, negotiated, prayed. Grace took hospitality courses. I learned enough accounting to keep us from drowning. We painted rooms ourselves because we could not afford contractors for every wall. The first guest we ever gave a free room to was a woman named Mrs. Holloway, whose son had been injured in a car accident. She tried to pay us with a jar full of coins. Grace pushed the jar gently back across the counter. "Pay us by sleeping tonight," she said. That became the heart of the place. Years later, when investors became interested, they liked the story, but not always the sacrifice behind it. They wanted luxury suites, corporate retreats, marble valet, champagne service. Grace did not fight growth, but she insisted on protections. Certain rooms had to remain reserved for hardship cases. Certain funds had to remain untouched. Certain decisions could not be made by people who saw kindness as bad business. That was where Samuel Price came in. Samuel had been our attorney for decades, a careful man with silver-rimmed glasses and a voice that made even bad news sound organized. Grace trusted him. Near the end of her life, when cancer had made her body fragile, but not her mind, she met with Samuel often. I used to sit beside her and say, "Grace, don't tire yourself out with papers." She would squeeze my hand. "Love needs paperwork too, Ethan." At the time, I thought she was protecting the hotel from outsiders. I did not know she was protecting me from my own blood. I slipped the pocket watch into my vest pocket, folded the photograph carefully, and placed Samuel's envelope in my bag. I almost left it behind. Twice. Each time, something stopped me. Maybe memory has instincts of its own. The drive from Cleveland to the hotel felt longer than it was. I watched familiar neighborhoods give way to wider roads, glass buildings, and the busy confidence of downtown. My hands tightened on the steering wheel when the Robinson Grand came into view. It rose above the street in pale stone and dark glass, elegant and commanding. Valets moved quickly under the covered entrance. Flags snapped in the wind, the gold letters above the doors gleamed in the morning light. Robinson Grand. The name should have filled me with pride. Instead, I felt like a man returning to a childhood home after strangers had repainted every room. The old bones were still there if you knew where to look. The curve of the front arch, the side entrance Grace had insisted remain accessible for elderly guests. The magnolia trees along the walkway, planted because Grace said every hard place needed something soft nearby. But everything else had changed. A line of black cars waited at the curb. Women in tailored coats stepped out holding designer handbags. Men checked phones and adjusted cufflinks. A valet opened my car door and looked briefly confused, as if he was not sure whether my older sedan belonged in the same driveway as the luxury vehicles around it. "Checking in, sir?" he asked. "I'm here for the Bradford event," I said. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he recovered. Of course. I gave him my keys and stepped onto the pavement. For a moment, I simply stood there. I remembered Grace beside me on opening day squeezing my arm so hard, her nails pressed through my jacket. "Look at it, Ethan," she whispered then. "Look what kindness built." Now I looked at it and wondered what ambition had done. Inside the lobby, smelled of white lilies, polished wood, and money. Soft piano music drifted from somewhere near the lounge. The ceiling soared high above me, dripping with crystal lights that reflected off marble floors. Employees moved with trained smiles. Guests spoke in low voices that carried confidence. I paused near the entrance. There on the far wall hung the magnolia painting. Grace had bought it from a local artist when we could barely afford payroll. I had told her it was too expensive. She had told me beauty was not a luxury when people were suffering. If a woman walks in here scared about her husband's surgery, Grace said, "I want her to see something alive." I walked toward the painting without thinking. My fingers lifted, stopping just short of touching the frame. "Can I help you, sir?" The young woman's voice came from behind me. She wore a black blazer and a name tag. Her smile was professional, but uncertain. I turned. "I'm here for the partnership event. Name Ethan Robinson." She typed on her tablet. Her forehead creased. "I'm sorry I don't see you on the immediate guest list. That's all right. My son Caleb invited me. Rachel Robinson is coordinating the event." At Rachel's name, the young woman straightened slightly. "Oh, Mrs. Robinson is very busy today." "I'm sure she is," I said. The young woman looked at my suit. My worn leather shoes, my old bag, not rudely, not exactly. But I saw the calculation pass across her face. People think age makes you invisible. It does not. It makes you visible in a way that allows others to underestimate you openly. "Would you like to wait near the front desk?" she asked. I nodded. As I crossed the lobby, memories rose around me like ghosts. Grace laughing behind the old counter. Caleb as a little boy sliding down the bottom banister before I caught him. A Christmas Eve when we gave out hot chocolate to stranded travelers during an ice storm. The first time someone wrote us a thank you letter, and Grace cried reading it. I wanted to feel welcomed by those memories. Instead, I felt watched. Near the center of the lobby, several people gathered around a woman in a cream-colored dress. Her posture was perfect. Her hair shone under the chandelier. She laughed lightly at something one of the investors said, then turned her head. Rachel saw me. Her smile did not fade. That was the frightening thing. It stayed exactly where it was polished and false. But her eyes changed. They sharpened. For one brief second, she looked not surprised, but irritated, as if I had arrived too early for my own humiliation. Then I saw Caleb beside her. My son. He wore an expensive charcoal suit I did not recognize, and a blue tie that made him look like a man in a brochure for success. His eyes met mine, and something flickered across his face. Shame, maybe. Fear. I lifted my hand slightly. He did not lift his back. Rachel touched his arm, leaned close, and said something I could not hear. Then they both started walking toward me. I felt the envelope in my bag press against my side. For the first time that day, I understood that Grace's hound just in case had not been fear. It had been love with its eyes open. Rachel reached me before Caleb did. That was the way their marriage seemed to work. Rachel moved first, spoke first, decided first. Caleb followed half a step behind, wearing the expression of a man who wanted credit for power without taking responsibility for how it was used. Ethan, Rachel said, not Dad, not Mr. Robinson, not even a warm hello, just my name spoken like an inconvenience. Rachel, I replied. Her eyes moved over my suit, my shoes, my bag. The smile she wore was still technically polite, but it had no kindness in it. We weren't expecting you so early, she said. Caleb invited me for the event. I looked past her to my son. He said it was important for the family. Caleb cleared his throat. Hi, Dad. 2 words. After months of distance, 2 words were all he gave me. Still, my heart betrayed me. It softened at the sound of his voice. I remembered him at 7 years old running into my office at school with a paper turkey he had made from construction paper. I remembered him at 16 pretending he was too old to hug me in public, but doing it anyway when Grace wasn't looking. I remembered the night he got accepted into college and cried because he thought we would not be able to afford it. A parent's memory can be cruel. It keeps showing you the child while the adult breaks your heart. You look well, I said. Caleb nodded without meeting my eyes. Thanks. Rachel turned, slightly positioning herself between us. The lobby is very crowded today, she said. We have investors, board members, and press contacts moving through. It may be better if you wait somewhere quieter. I don't mind the lobby. Her smile tightened. I do. The words landed softly, but the meaning was sharp. A man nearby glanced over. Rachel noticed and immediately laughed as if we were sharing a harmless family joke. You know what I mean? She said louder now. This event has a certain tone. We need everything smooth. I won't disturb anything. She tilted her head. Ethan, sometimes people don't realize when they're disturbing something. Caleb's jaw moved, but he said nothing. I looked around the lobby. The chandelier, the flowers, the marble, the well-dressed guests pretending not to listen. This had once been a place where Grace would walk straight toward a nervous stranger and offer coffee before asking for a credit card. Now I was being measured like a stain on the carpet. I'd like to check in, I said calmly. And after that, I want to visit Grace's room. Rachel's eyes flashed, only for a second. Then she looked confused on purpose. Grace's room, the corner suite on the 7th floor. She stayed there during treatment, when the hospital was too far for her to travel back and forth. There were papers left there, some personal things. Rachel gave a small laugh. Oh, Ethan, that room hasn't been called that in years. It will always be Grace's room to me. That's sweet, she said, and somehow made sweet sound insulting. But we have a major investor using that suite this weekend. We can't displace important guests because of nostalgia. Important guests. I looked at Caleb again. You knew I wanted to go there. He shifted his weight. Dad, things have changed. Rachel is managing a lot today. Things change, I said. Promises shouldn't. Rachel's expression hardened. Let's not do this here. Do what? Turn a professional event into an emotional scene. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I kept my voice even. I have not raised my voice. No, she said. But you have a way of making people uncomfortable. That sentence made Caleb finally look at me, not with defense, with warning, as if I was the dangerous one. A young receptionist stood behind the marble desk, watching nervously. Rachel snapped her fingers lightly, not loud, but enough to summon obedience. Check whether Mr. Robinson has a reservation. she said. The receptionist typed quickly. I'm not seeing one. I didn't ask for a reservation, I said. I was invited to attend. Rachel gave the receptionist a knowing look. Check the event list. More typing. The receptionist swallowed. I don't see Mr. Ethan Robinson listed for the Bradford reception. Rachel sighed as if saddened by my confusion. There must have been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said. Caleb called me himself. Several people were openly watching now. I saw a woman in pearls whisper to her husband. A man near the elevators paused with his phone in hand. Staff members pretended to arrange flowers that did not need arranging. Rachel lowered her voice, but not enough to keep others from hearing. Ethan, maybe you mixed up the date. I stared at her. There it was. The first careful brushstroke in the portrait she wanted to paint of me. Confused old man, forgetful, unstable, embarrassing. I did not mix up the date. Caleb rubbed the back of his neck. Dad, maybe we talked about it, but nothing was finalized. My breath caught. It is a strange thing hearing a lie from the mouth of someone whose first word you celebrated. Caleb, I said quietly, you told me to check in at the front desk. His eyes flicked toward Rachel. I said a lot was going on. Rachel stepped closer. Ethan, this is exactly what we were worried about. I frowned. She put on a soft voice, the kind people use when they want witnesses to believe they are compassionate. You've been under stress. Since Grace passed, Caleb has told me you sometimes remember things differently. The lobby seemed to tilt. I looked at my son. You told her that. He did not answer. Rachel continued. No one is blaming you. We just don't want you upsetting yourself in public. That was when I understood this was not an accident. The missing name, the public questioning, the careful mention of my memory, Caleb's silence, Rachel's calm cruelty. They had arranged this stage before I ever walked through the doors. I could have shouted then. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to point to the Magnolia painting and tell everyone I knew the artist who painted it. I wanted to tell them I had carried lumber through the service entrance before half of them knew this hotel existed. I wanted to tell them my wife had bled her soul into these walls. But I had spent too many years around children to mistake volume for strength. So I stood still. I would like to see the guest list, I said. Rachel blinked. Excuse me? If my name has been removed or omitted, I'd like to see the list. This is not your concern. My name is my concern. Her lips parted slightly. Caleb whispered, Dad, don't carried everything. Don't embarrass me. Don't challenge her. Don't remind people you matter. The receptionist looked trapped. She had a printed event sheet lying beside her keyboard. I could see names, room assignments, access badges. Without thinking, I reached toward it, not to snatch, not to cause trouble, just to point to the section where family names were usually listed. Rachel moved faster than I expected. Her hand came down hard across mine. The slap cracked against my skin, sharp and humiliating. My wedding ring struck the marble. The lobby went silent. For one suspended second, nobody breathed. I looked down at my hand. The skin had reddened across the knuckles. Grace's ring, the one I still wore because I could not bear to take off the symbol of our life, had twisted slightly on my finger. Then I looked at Caleb. My son stared at the floor. And in that silence, something inside me stopped pleading. Pain is not always measured by how hard someone hits you. Rachel's slap stung. Yes. My hand burned where her fingers had struck the back of it. But that was not the pain that made my chest feel hollow. The real pain was Caleb's silence. I had seen my son fall off a bicycle and run to me with bloody knees. I had sat beside his bed during fevers. I had worked summer programs and night tutoring sessions to help pay for his college. I had stood behind him at Grace's funeral when his grief made him shake so badly, I had to hold him upright. Now he stood 10 feet away while his wife struck his father in public, and he said nothing. Rachel seemed to realize just a moment too late How many people had seen what she did? Her eyes darted around the lobby. The guests, the staff, the valet near the door, the receptionist pale behind the desk. Then Rachel did what people like her do when cruelty becomes visible. She tried to rename it as concern. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling in a way I knew was performed. "You cannot grab confidential event documents." I did not grab anything. You reached over the desk to see whether my name was there. You were becoming agitated. I stared at her. I was standing still. She turned to the receptionist. "Please make a note that Mr. Robinson attempted to interfere with restricted event materials." The young woman hesitated. Rachel's eyes sharpened. "Now." The receptionist lowered her gaze and typed something. I wondered if she knew she had just become part of a lie. Maybe she did. Maybe she was afraid of losing her job. Fear makes decent people cooperate with indecent things more often than we want to admit. I looked at Caleb again. "Son," I said, and the word came out softer than I intended. His face tightened. For a moment, I thought he might step forward. I thought maybe some memory would reach him. Maybe he would remember Grace telling him that a man who lets someone humiliate the old has already humiliated himself. But Rachel looked at him first. That was all it took. Caleb's shoulders sagged. He whispered, "Dad, just calm down." Calm down. Those words almost made me laugh. Not because anything was funny, but because there is a particular cruelty in telling a wounded person to be calm while standing beside the person who wounded them. "I am calm," I said. Rachel leaned close enough that her perfume covered the smell of lilies in the lobby. "This place doesn't belong to people like you anymore," she whispered. The words were low, meant only for me, but I heard every piece of them. People like you, older people, simple people, people in worn suits, people who believed history mattered, people who did not understand that family could become a boardroom strategy. I looked into her eyes and saw no shame. That was when I knew Rachel had not acted in anger. She had acted from belief. She truly believed I did not belong in the place my wife and I had built our lives around. Something inside me settled then. Not broke. Settled. There are moments when anger arrives like fire, but there are other moments when truth arrives like cold water clearing your vision. I no longer needed Caleb to defend me. I no longer needed Rachel to respect me. I no longer needed the strangers in that lobby to understand who I was. I only needed the truth to remain the truth. I straightened my jacket slowly. Rachel seemed irritated that I did not explode. People like her expect humiliation to produce either collapse or chaos, tears or yelling, anything they can point to and say, "See, I told you he was unstable." I gave her neither. Instead, I looked at the receptionist. "May I have your name, please?" She looked startled. "Amanda." "Thank you, Amanda." Rachel frowned. "Why are you asking her name?" "Because I believe people should be seen clearly when they are asked to participate in something." Amanda's face flushed. Rachel's mouth tightened. Enough of this. She lifted her hand not to strike me again, but to signal towards security near the entrance. Before she could call them over, I spoke. "You should have asked what my name meant here." Rachel froze. Only slightly. But I saw it. Caleb saw it too. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. I turned my gaze to my son. He finally looked at me. In his eyes, I saw panic now. Not guilt. Panic. He knew there were pieces of this place he did not fully control. He knew Grace had left things behind. He knew Samuel Price had warned him more than once that certain decisions could not be made without me. But Rachel did not know everything. That I realized was the crack between them. "You heard me," I said. Rachel gave a short laugh and turned toward the watching guests. "This is exactly what I mean," she said, raising her voice just enough to reclaim the room. "Mr. Robinson has a very emotional attachment to the hotel because of his late wife. We've tried to be compassionate, but he keeps insisting he has authority here. The word authority landed heavily. People shifted. A few exchanged glances. I saw the narrative forming around me. Elderly father, dead wife, delusions of importance, difficult family situation. Poor Rachel trying to manage him during a major event. I could almost admire the efficiency of her cruelty. Caleb stepped forward at last, but not to defend me. "Dad," he said quietly, "please don't make us do this." Do what? He glanced toward the security guards. My heart, already bruised, took another blow. "You would have me removed." His eyes shone, but still he did not stop. "You're not giving us a choice." I nodded slowly. "That's what you believe. I believe you need help." The sentence was careful, practiced. I wondered how many times he and Rachel had rehearsed it. I wondered whether they had sat at some polished dining table drinking wine bought with money Grace would have wanted used for hardship rooms, deciding what words would make me sound least credible. You need help? You're confused? You're emotional? You're remembering things wrong. They were not just insulting me. They were building a cage out of concern. Rachel touched Caleb's arm approvingly, then looked at the guards. "Please escort Mr. Robinson to the waiting area until we can decide what to do." One guard approached a tall young man with kind eyes and an uncomfortable expression. "Sir," he said softly, "would you mind stepping over here?" I looked at him and saw he was not the enemy. He was doing what he had been told. "I'll step over there," I said, "but not because she has the right to remove me." Rachel rolled her eyes. As I moved away from the desk, every step felt heavier than the last. The lobby that had once held Grace's laughter now held whispers. I passed the magnolia painting and refused to look at it because I knew if I did, I might lose the calm Rachel was trying so hard to steal from me. They seated me in a quiet area near a row of tall windows away from the main flow of guests, but still visible enough to be watched. That was another kind of humiliation. Not thrown out, displayed, contained. Rachel returned to her group of investors with an apologetic smile, as if she had just handled an unfortunate spill. Caleb stayed behind for one moment. He looked at me from across the lobby. I waited. Even then, after everything, a foolish part of me waited for him to come over. To say, "Dad, I'm sorry." To say I didn't know she would do that. To say, "Come with me, we'll fix this." But he only turned and followed his wife. I sat alone with my stinging hand resting on my knee. The ring Grace had placed on my finger decades ago still felt twisted, so I slowly turned it back into place. That was when a woman's voice behind me said, "Mr. Robinson, not Ethan." "Not sir." "Mr. Robinson." I turned. An older hotel employee stood a few feet away, one hand pressed to her chest. Her hair was gray now, her face lined with years, but I recognized her eyes. Martha Lewis. She had worked the night desk when Robinson Grand was still Robinson House. She had once held Caleb as a baby, while Grace helped a guest whose husband had been rushed into surgery. Her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my Lord," she whispered, "it really is you." For the first time that day, someone looked at me and saw the truth. I swallowed hard. "Hello, Martha." She glanced toward Rachel, then toward Caleb, then back at me. Her face changed from tenderness to alarm. "What are they doing to you?" I did not answer. "I did not have to." Martha leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Mr. Robinson, there's something you need to know. They've been asking about the old founding file. Robinson-01. The air seemed to leave the room. I tightened my hand around the armrest. "Who are ye?" Her eyes moved toward my son and daughter-in-law. Both of them, she whispered, and they were very upset when legal wouldn't release it. Across the lobby, Rachel laughed brightly at something an investor said, still playing the perfect hostess. But now I knew. This was not only about keeping me away from Grace's room. This was about something hidden in the bones of the hotel itself. And whatever was in that file, Caleb and Rachel were afraid I would reach it first. Martha Lewis looked like she had seen a ghost. For a moment, Neither of us spoke. Around us, the hotel moved on in its polished way. Suitcases rolled across marble. Glasses clinked near the lounge. A pianist played something soft and expensive. People smiled the kind of smiles they practiced for rooms where money was listening. But in the small sitting area near the windows, time seemed to fold backward. Martha had been there when Robinson Grand was still Robinson House. She had worked the night shift in a navy cardigan, bringing coffee to exhausted families who came from the hospital with fear in their eyes. Grace trusted her. I trusted her. Caleb, when he was a boy, used to call her Aunt Martha because she slipped peppermints into his coat pocket when Grace wasn't looking. Now she stood in front of me, in a formal hotel uniform, her name tag shining under the lobby lights, her eyes full of pain. "Mr. Robinson," she whispered again, "I didn't know they were bringing you here today." "They?" I asked. Her lips pressed together. That one small movement told me more than any answer could have. I looked across the lobby. Rachel stood near a group of investors laughing as if nothing had happened. Caleb was beside her, holding a champagne flute he had not touched. His eyes kept drifting toward me, then away again. "They knew exactly what they were doing," I said quietly. Martha sat down beside me, though she glanced around first to make sure no one was close enough to hear. "I should be careful," she said. "But I can't stand here and watch Grace Robinson's husband be treated like a trespasser." Hearing Grace's name from someone who loved her nearly broke the composure I had been holding together by force. "She would have hated this," I said. Martha's eyes shone. She would have marched straight across this lobby and put everybody in their place. A small laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Yes, she would have. Then Martha's face grew serious again. "Mr. Robinson, the founding file is still here." Robinson-01, I said. She nodded. I had heard the phrase before, but only in fragments. Samuel Price had mentioned it after Grace's funeral, telling me it was a protected file related to the original trust. Grace had mentioned papers, safeguards, old agreements. But after she died, I could barely manage breakfast, let alone study legal documents. I trusted Samuel to watch over things. I trusted Caleb to be my son. That was my mistake. "What have they been asking for?" I said. Martha folded her hands tightly in her lap. "Access, copies, authority to review. Rachel said she needed it for the Bradford transition. Caleb said he was acting as family representative." "Family representative," I repeated. The words tasted bitter. "Legal wouldn't release it." Martha continued, "Not without trustee approval." That made Rachel furious. She came down to records 2 weeks ago and told our compliance manager that old paperwork was holding up a multi-million-dollar opportunity. And Caleb Martha looked away. "What did my son say?" I asked. "He said you were no longer in a position to understand complex business matters." For a moment, the noise of the lobby faded. I had expected betrayal to feel like fire. Instead, it felt cold. Cold enough to make my hands still. Cold enough to make my thoughts clear. When did he say that more than once? I leaned back against the chair, staring at the polished floor. I could see the reflection of the chandelier in it, bright and broken into pieces. Martha lowered her voice further. "There's something else." I turned toward her. Last week, Rachel asked whether hotel security could file incident reports if a family member became disruptive during a private event. My stomach tightened. She asked that Martha nodded. She said it was hypothetical. Hypothetical. That was how people prepare a trap while keeping their hands clean. I looked down at my hand. The redness from Rachel's slap had darkened slightly across the skin. Grace's ring sat properly now, but my fingers still throbbed beneath it. "So they wanted an incident," I said. Martha did not answer, and that silence was enough. A guard stood near the edge of the sitting area, not close enough to intimidate me, but close enough to remind me I had been placed there. I wondered what Rachel had told him. Confused father, emotional widower, possible disturbance. It was a neat little story, and I was supposed to step into the role she had written. I had spent years teaching children to recognize when someone was trying to define them unfairly. I used to tell my students, Never let someone else's bad opinions become your name tag. Yet here I was, sitting under a chandelier in the hotel my wife helped build, being labeled unstable by my own family. "Mr. Robinson," Martha said, "do you have Samuel Price's number?" "I do. You may need him." I looked at her. "Do you know what is in that file?" "Not everything. Files like that are restricted. But I remember enough from the old days. Mrs. Robinson was very careful before she passed." I swallowed. Grace always said love needed paperwork. Martha smiled sadly. That sounds like her. Across the lobby, Rachel looked in our direction. Her expression changed when she saw Martha sitting beside me. She excused herself from the investors and began walking toward us with sharp, controlled steps. "Martha." She called out, her voice sweet but dangerous. "I believe the North Ballroom needs attention." Martha stood immediately, but not because Rachel owned her, because women like Martha understood survival in workplaces ruled by people like Rachel. "I'll check on it," Martha said. Rachel stopped in front of us. Her eyes moved from Martha to me, then back again. "I hope Mr. Robinson hasn't been troubling you." Martha's face became professionally blank. "Not at all." Rachel's smile tightened. "Good. Because today is not the day for sentimental distractions." I looked up at her. "Is that what you call me?" Rachel ignored me. "Martha, please return to your duties." For a moment, Martha hesitated. Then she looked at me and said clearly, "Of course, Mr. Robinson. It was good to see you again." Rachel's jaw hardened at the title. Martha walked away, but as she passed behind my chair, she slipped something into my palm. A small, folded note. I kept my hand closed until Rachel turned her attention back to me. "You just can't help yourself, can you?" she said. "I'm sitting exactly where you told security to put me. You're stirring up staff." I said hello to an old friend. Rachel leaned down slightly. "You don't have friends here anymore." I studied her face. She was younger than my son, beautiful, polished, and hungry in a way that made her seem older than both of us. "Grace had friends here," I said. "Grace is gone." The cruelty of that sentence passed through me like a blade. Rachel seemed to know she had gone too far, but instead of apologizing, she straightened. "Caleb and I have worked very hard to bring this hotel into the future. We will not let you drag it backward because you can't let go. I am not the one holding on to something that isn't mine." Her eyes narrowed. For the first time that day, I saw real fear break through her confidence. Before she could answer, a ripple moved through the lobby. People turned toward the main entrance. A tall white man in a dark tailored suit entered with 2 assistants and a small group of executives. His hair was silver at the temples, his posture formal, his expression practiced for boardrooms. William Bradford, CEO of Bradford Hospitality Group. Rachel immediately changed. Her shoulders relaxed, her smile warmed, her voice brightened. "Mr. Bradford," she said, turning away from me as if I were nothing more than a smudge. She had finished wiping off the glass. William Bradford shook Caleb's hand first, then Rachel's. Cameras from the event photographer flashed. Guests shifted into position. The entire lobby seemed to rearrange itself around power. I opened my palm and looked at the note Martha had left me. 3 words were written in hurried blue ink. "Ask for Robinson 01. My heart began to pound. Rachel was already leading William toward the reception area, speaking lightly about the event schedule. Caleb walked beside them, pale but smiling. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket beside Grace's watch. For the first time since I entered that hotel, I did not feel alone. I still felt hurt. I still felt humiliated. But beneath that, something steadier had begun to rise. Grace had left a trail. Martha had pointed to it, and Rachel, for all her polish, had made one mistake. She thought slapping my hand away from that desk would make me disappear. Instead, she had pushed me straight toward the truth. William Bradford had the kind of presence that made people lower their voices. He was not loud. He did not need to be. He moved through the lobby with the calm authority of a man used to doors opening before he touched them. Rachel glided beside him, smiling brightly, pointing out floral arrangements, introducing him to board members, explaining the timing of the reception. Caleb walked on William's other side. My son looked like a man trying to keep his face from revealing a crime. I remained seated near the windows, with one security guard pretending not to watch me. The folded note from Martha felt heavy in my pocket. Ask for Robinson 01. But I knew asking at the wrong moment could give Rachel exactly what she wanted. She needed me to seem unreasonable. She needed me to interrupt a cue's demand, raise my voice. She needed the CEO to see an old man who could not control himself. So I waited. That was something age had taught me. Not every battle is won by moving first. Rachel brought William toward the marble desk where I had been struck. Amanda, the young receptionist, stood stiffly behind it. She looked at me once, then looked down quickly. I could not blame her entirely. Fear travels downward in places like that. The powerful give orders, and the powerless carry the guilt. William glanced toward the sitting area. Is everything all right over there? He asked. Rachel followed his gaze and let out a soft, embarrassed sigh. I apologize for that, she said. For what? A family matter. Caleb's hand tightened around his glass. William looked at him. Your family? Rachel answered before Caleb could. Caleb's father, Ethan Robinson. William's eyes moved back to me with mild interest. A maid? Robinson. Yes? Rachel said quickly. It's emotional for him, of course. The family name, the memories. He sometimes believes he still has a role here. I stood then. Not quickly, not dramatically, just enough to make it clear I could hear every word. Rachel's smile hardened. Ethan, she called gently. Please sit down. We're handling this. I have been handled enough for one morning. A few heads turned. William studied me more carefully. Caleb stepped forward. Dad, please? There was that word again, please. But it did not mean, please let me help you. It meant, please stop exposing us. William held up one hand, quieting Caleb. Mr. Robinson, he said, I'm William Bradford. I know who you are. His expression did not change, and I understand there has been some confusion. No, I said. There has been a plan. Rachel laughed softly, but her eyes warned me. This is what I mentioned. She said to William, Ethan has been under a lot of emotional strain since his wife passed. He sometimes connects unrelated things. My wife's name was Grace, I said. If you are going to use her death as part of your explanation, say her name properly. The lobby became quieter. William's eyes flicked toward Rachel. Rachel's smile faltered, then returned. Of course, Grace was very loved. I almost asked by whom, but I held my tongue. Caleb moved closer to William, lowering his voice, but not enough. My father has had a hard few years. He's been confused lately. There it was. The sentence Martha had warned me about, not spoken in private, not said with concern at my kitchen table, said in a hotel lobby in front of strangers as part of a business strategy. I looked at Caleb, and for a second, I did not see the man in the expensive suit. I saw the boy who used to fall asleep with his head on my lap during Sunday football. I saw Grace brushing lint from his graduation gown. I saw myself teaching him how to shake hands, how to apologize, how to look people in the eye when telling the truth. What have I been confused about? Caleb, I asked. His face went tight. Rachel answered again. Ethan, we're not doing this publicly. You made it public when you slapped my hand off that desk. William's head turned sharply toward Rachel. Amanda froze behind the counter. Rachel's cheeks colored, but she recovered. He reached for restricted documents. I reached for a guest list after you claimed I had not been invited. You weren't invited, she said. I looked at Caleb. His mouth opened, then closed. William noticed. That was the first time I saw doubt enter his face. He turned to Caleb. Did you invite your father? Caleb swallowed. We discussed him coming. That is not what I asked. Rachel stepped in. Mr. Bradford, with respect, this is a painful family issue, and I don't think it should delay the reception. William's voice cooled. You were the one who brought it into my lobby. My lobby. The phrase landed strangely in me. William spoke like a man about to control something that did not belong to him yet. Before Rachel could answer, security approached again. Ma'am, one guard said, looking at Rachel. Would you like us to move him farther from the event space? William looked at the guard, then at me. Has Mr. Robinson threatened anyone? No, sir. The guard admitted, raised his voice. No, sir. Damaged property, no, sir. Rachel's smile had vanished now. He is creating discomfort, she said. William looked around at the watching guests. Discomfort is not grounds for removal. I almost admired him then. Not trusted him, but admired that he still recognized the line between inconvenience and wrongdoing. Then Martha appeared from the hallway. She walked faster than I had ever seen her walk, one hand holding a folder, the other pressed against her side, as if she had been hurrying. Rachel snapped. I told you to check the ballroom. Martha ignored her. That alone made the air shift. She looked directly at William. Mr. Bradford, before any action is taken against Mr. Robinson, you need to read Robinson-01. The name seemed to strike the room like a dropped glass. William's expression changed. Not dramatically, not enough for every guest to understand. But I saw it. Rachel saw it. Caleb saw it. His eyes narrowed slightly. Who are you? He asked. Martha Lewis, Senior Guest Services. 31 years with this property. And how do you know that file designation? I was here when Grace Robinson created it. Rachel stepped forward. This is inappropriate. Martha has no authority to William cut her off. Robinson-01 is a founding file designation. Caleb's face went pale. My heart struck hard once against my ribs. Rachel tried to laugh. It's old paperwork. Completely irrelevant to today's agreement. William looked at her. If it is irrelevant, opening, it should not concern you. The silence that followed was the first honest thing Rachel had given me all day. William turned toward one of his assistants. Contact legal. I want the file brought to a private conference room immediately. Rachel's voice sharpened. Mr. Bradford, that will delay the reception. Then the reception will wait. A murmur moved through the lobby. Investors looked at one another. Caleb stared at the floor again, but this time his silence did not protect him. It exposed him. William turned to me. Mr. Robinson, would you come with us? Rachel's eyes widened. You're inviting him into a legal review. William looked at her with a calm that felt colder than anger. I am inviting the man whose name is on the founding file. For the first time that morning, Rachel had no answer. I walked past her slowly. My hands still hurt. My heart hurt worse. But as I passed the marble desk, Amanda looked up at me with tears shining in her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded once, not because everything was forgiven, but because I knew what it meant to be afraid. Then I followed William Bradford, Martha Lewis, my trembling son, and my furious daughter-in-law into the private conference room. Behind us, the lobby doors closed, and the truth, after years of waiting in a file no one wanted, opened, finally began to breathe. The private conference room was too cold. That was my first thought. Not about the law, not about the file, not even about Caleb, who sat across from me, with his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Just the cold. The room had glass walls partly covered by frosted panels, a long dark table, leather chairs, and a screen mounted on one wall. A pitcher of water sat untouched in the center. Outside, through the blurred glass, I could see shadows moving in the lobby. Guests waiting, staff whispering. An entire event paused because a man everyone wanted to dismiss had a name buried too deep in the foundation to ignore. William Bradford sat at the head of the table. His assistant stood near the door speaking quietly into a phone. Martha remained beside the wall, her hands folded, looking both frightened and determined. Rachel refused to sit at first. She stood behind Caleb's chair like a lawyer, a guard and a puppeteer all at once. I placed my old leather bag on the floor beside my feet. The envelope from Samuel Price was still inside. I did not touch it yet. Some truths need to be revealed in the right order. William looked at me. Mr. Robinson, before we begin, I want to clarify something. Bradford Hospitality has not finalized any agreement with Robinson Grand. Today was intended to be ceremonial pending final review. Then I'm glad review still means something, I said. His mouth tightened slightly, almost a smile. Rachel crossed her arms. This is unnecessary. Ethan has no operational role here. William did not look at her. That is what we are about to determine. Caleb spoke for the first time since we entered. Dad, this doesn't have to be hostile. I turned to him. No, I said. It didn't. His face fell. A knock sounded. The door opened and a woman from the legal department entered, carrying a sealed archival folder inside a gray document case. She looked uneasy, as though she had been asked to carry a sleeping snake. Mr. Bradford, she said this file required executive override to access. William nodded. Open it. Rachel stepped forward. On what authority? The legal woman hesitated. William's eyes lifted. Mine. That ended the argument. The document case was placed on the table. The seal was logged, photographed, and broken. Every movement felt ceremonial, almost sacred. I thought of Grace, then thin from treatment wrapped in her cream shawl, insisting Samuel bring documents to her hospital room because she still had things to protect. Love needs paperwork too, Ethan. The first page was a cover sheet. Robinson. -01 Founding Legacy File. Robinson Grand Trust Holdings. William read silently at first. His expression remained professional, but the longer he read, the more his face changed. The polite distance faded. His brows drew together. He turned to the legal woman. Has this been cross-referenced with the proposed transition agreement? She shook her head. We were told the family representative documents superseded older internal references. William looked at Caleb, by whom Caleb's mouth opened. Rachel answered, by current management. William's gaze moved to her. That was not an answer. The room went still. He turned the next page. I saw Grace's handwriting before anyone read it aloud. My breath caught. Even from across the table, I knew the shape of her letters. Strong downward strokes. Slight curve on capital G. She wrote the way she lived, graceful but impossible to push over. William began reading portions aloud. This memorandum establishes the Robinson Grand Legacy Trust as a protected founding structure to preserve the original humanitarian mission of the property. His voice slowed. Founding trustees, Grace Robinson and Ethan Robinson. Rachel's face tightened. Caleb closed his eyes. William continued. In the event of Grace Robinson's death, Ethan Robinson shall remain protected, founding trustee with permanent consent authority over sale transfer, long-term management change, debt restructuring mission fund use, and any alteration of reserved hardship rooms. My heartbeat sounded loud in my ears. I had known Grace protected certain rooms. I had known Samuel said my signature mattered. But hearing it read aloud in that cold room felt like Grace had reached across death and placed a hand on my shoulder. Rachel gave a sharp laugh. With respect, those provisions are symbolic. The hotel has evolved significantly since then. The legal woman looked at her papers. These provisions are binding. Rachel's laugh died. William turned another page. There is more. He read silently again, then leaned back. Mr. Robinson, he said, were you aware that no management partnership can be finalized without your direct written consent? I was aware my consent mattered. I was not aware so many people were pretending it didn't. Caleb flinched. Rachel leaned over the table. This is absurd. Ethan hasn't been involved in operations for years. He doesn't understand the current financial landscape. William's voice remained even. The file anticipated that argument. Rachel blinked. He lifted a page. Any claim that Ethan Robinson lacks capacity, business competence, or legal authority must be supported by independent medical and legal review conducted by parties not financially connected to Robinson, Grand Management family beneficiaries or prospective partners. The legal woman added quietly, "Without that, any attempt to bypass consent triggers a protective freeze." "Freeze?" I asked. William looked at me, and this time there was no condescension in his eyes. "It means if someone tried to declare you unfit without proper independent review, all authority connected to trust-controlled assets could be temporarily suspended until investigation." Martha let out a quiet breath near the wall. Rachel went pale. Caleb whispered, "That can't be right." William turned toward him. "Why not?" My son had no answer. Because Caleb had not expected Grace to be this careful. Because he had not expected his mother's love to have legal teeth. Because he had believed I was too old, too trusting, too lonely to stand in the way. William looked through another section. "There are hardship room protections here, a fund, reserved access, community clauses." "Yes," I said softly. "Grace rooms." Martha covered her mouth. Rachel frowned. "Those rooms have not operated under that name for years." William's expression sharpened. "Why not?" Rachel looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at the table. The answer sat between them like a stain. Money, prestige, luxury branding. They had buried Grace's mission because kindness did not photograph well for investors. William turned one more page and stopped. His face hardened. "What is it?" I asked. He read slowly. "In the event that any family member, officer, manager, or representative attempts to pressure, isolate, discredit, publicly humiliate, or falsely document Ethan Robinson as unstable for the purpose of gaining control over trust assets, such action shall be considered hostile interference with founding trustee rights." The room went silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to quiet. Rachel's lips parted. "That language is ridiculous," she said, but her voice had lost its strength. William did not respond to her. He kept reading. "Recommended immediate action, executive review, suspension of pending transfers, audit of submitted capacity claims, and notification of Samuel Price or successor counsel." Samuel's name made my hand move at last toward my bag. Rachel saw the movement. "What is in there?" she demanded. I looked at her. "Something Grace told me to keep." Caleb's eyes filled with fear. William closed the folder halfway, keeping one hand on it. "Mr. Robinson, I need to ask you directly. Did you authorize your son or daughter-in-law to act as your legal representative in matters involving this trust?" "No." "Did you sign consent for today's transition agreement?" "No." "Have you been evaluated by any independent physician or attorney as unable to manage your affairs?" "No," Rachel snapped. "He doesn't remember half of what he signs?" I turned to her. "Rachel, you slapped my hand less than an hour ago because I reached for a guest list. Be careful how much more of yourself you reveal." Her face flushed red. William looked toward the legal woman. "I want every document submitted by Caleb Robinson or Rachel Robinson regarding Ethan Robinson's authority, capacity, or consent pulled immediately." Caleb leaned forward. "Mr. Bradford, please. This is a misunderstanding." William's voice became steel. "No, Mr. Robinson. A misunderstanding is a wrong date or a missing signature. This appears to be an attempt to bypass a protected trustee." Rachel stood abruptly. "I will not sit here and be accused based on ancient paperwork and an emotional old man's version of events." I looked at her calmly. "You were very sure I was old when you thought it made me weak." She froze. I reached into my bag and rested my hand on Samuel's envelope, but I did not open it yet. William was still reading Grace's file, and for once, the room was not asking whether I belonged. It was asking who had dared to pretend I didn't. The legal department moved quickly after that, not because they suddenly cared about me, though maybe some did. They moved quickly because paperwork has a language powerful people respect. Hurt feelings can be dismissed. Tears can be explained away. An old man's humiliation can be renamed as confusion. But a protected trust clause with signatures dates witnesses and penalties. That gets attention. William's assistant stepped out to make calls. The legal woman, whose name was Denise Harper, opened a laptop at the conference table and began pulling digital records tied to the Bradford partnership. Martha remained near the wall watching Rachel, the way you watch someone holding a match near curtains. Caleb sat across from me, sweating through the collar of his expensive shirt. Rachel paced. She no longer looked like the elegant hostess of a luxury event. Her smile had vanished. Her steps were tight and restless. Every few seconds she checked her phone as if searching for someone who could still rescue the story she had written. William looked at Denise. What was submitted regarding Mr. Robinson's trustee authority, Denise typed for several seconds. There is a family representative packet uploaded 3 weeks ago. By whom? Caleb Robinson. My son closed his eyes. William's gaze did not move from the screen. Open it. Denise clicked. I watched her face change. That is the thing about truth. Before anyone reads it aloud, it leaves fingerprints on the faces of those who find it. What does it say? I asked. Denise glanced at William, who nodded. She began carefully. The packet states that Ethan Robinson is no longer actively involved in trust oversight due to age-related decline, emotional instability, following the death of Grace Robinson, and inability to participate in complex business decisions. The words entered me slowly. Age-related decline, emotional instability, inability. I had been called many things in my life: strict, gentle, stubborn, old-fashioned, Principal Robinson, Mr. Ethan, Dad. But this was different. This was not an insult shouted in anger. This was a cage built in legal language. Caleb whispered, Dad, I didn't write it like that. I looked at him. But you submitted it. His mouth trembled. Rachel handled most of the language. Rachel spun toward him. Do not put this on me. William lifted a hand. Both of you will have time to explain. Right now, we are reviewing facts. Denise continued. There is also a recommendation that Caleb Robinson be recognized as practical family decision-maker for matters related to the proposed management agreement. Practical family decision-maker. I repeated. It sounded so clean, so reasonable. That was what frightened me most. Cruelty rarely calls itself cruelty in official documents. It dresses itself in concern, efficiency, and necessity. William asked, Is there a medical evaluation attached? Denise scrolled. There is a physician letter. My stomach tightened. I never saw a doctor for this, I said. Denise opened the attachment. Her eyes narrowed. This appears to be a general wellness summary from a clinic visit 18 months ago. It mentions grief-related sleep disturbance after Mrs. Robinson's passing. It does not declare incapacity. William looked at Caleb. Who characterized this as evidence of decline? Caleb looked at Rachel. Rachel raised her chin. It supported a broader pattern. What broader pattern? I asked. She faced me, then anger replacing caution. You forget things, Ethan. You live in the past. You talk about Grace like she's still walking through the lobby. I felt the room watching me. Yes, I said softly. I talk about my wife. That is grief, not incompetence. Rachel scoffed. And today you came in demanding rooms, reaching over desks, upsetting staff. There it is, I said. William looked at me. What do you mean? I turned toward him. They needed today. Rachel's face went still. I continued, voice calm, though my chest burned. Caleb invited me here. He told me to check in at the front desk. But my name was not on the list. Rachel challenged me publicly. She mentioned my memory before I had done anything. She slapped my hand when I tried to see whether my name was there. Then she ordered Amanda to note that I interfered with restricted materials. Amanda's name made Denise look up. William turned to his assistant. Find the front desk incident log. Rachel snapped. This is outrageous. He is twisting everything. Martha spoke for the first time. No, ma'am. He is describing exactly what happened. Rachel glared at her. You are staff. Remember that. Martha's expression did not change. I do. Those two words carried 31 years of service loyalty and quiet dignity. Rachel had power, but Martha had memory. Denise pulled up another record. There is an incident note entered 27 minutes ago by front desk staff. It states Ethan Robinson appeared agitated, attempted to access private event paperwork, family requested monitoring due to unstable behavior. The room fell silent. William looked at Rachel. Rachel looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at me. And I understood the plan fully. They did not need me arrested. They did not need me dragged out screaming. They only needed enough documentation to support the lie they had already filed. A missing reservation, a public confrontation, a note in the system, a security presence, a witness or two willing to say I looked upset. Then the next legal packet would say, incident confirms concerns. My own pain would become their evidence. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes for 1 second. Grace, I thought you saw farther than I did. When I opened my eyes, I reached for my bag. Rachel immediately said, What are you doing? I'm getting my own papers. You see, she said to William, he carries random documents around because he's paranoid. I looked at her and almost felt sorry for how little she understood women like Grace. This is not paranoia, I said. This is marriage. I opened the leather bag and removed Samuel Price's envelope. It was thick, cream-colored, worn slightly at the edges from years of being moved between safe places. On the front, in Samuel's neat handwriting, were the words, Ethan Robinson, personal copy open if trust authority is questioned. Caleb stared at it as though it might explode. Rachel stepped closer. Where did you get that? My attorney. Samuel had no right to. I looked up sharply. Be careful, Rachel. Samuel had every right. Grace made sure of it. William extended his hand. May I? I hesitated only because letting go of that envelope felt like letting go of Grace's hand. Then I passed it to him. He opened it carefully. Inside were copies of the trust summary, a notarized letter from Samuel Price, a recent legal affirmation of my authority, and a physician's statement from my actual doctor confirming that I was capable of managing my personal and legal affairs. William read silently. Denise leaned over to compare dates. This physician's statement is 6 months old, she said. Much more recent than the clinic note in the submitted packet. William looked at me. Why did you bring this today? I could have told him I did not know, but that would not have been fully true. I almost didn't, I said. But my wife spent the last months of her life making sure I would be protected if love made me too trusting. I suppose I owed her enough to carry what she left me and abandoned me. For the first time, William's expression softened. Caleb put his face in his hands. Rachel did not soften. She grew colder. This proves nothing except that Ethan was prepared to make a scene. I turned toward her. No, Rachel. It proves I was prepared to survive one. William handed the documents to Denise. Authenticate these against the founding file and contact Samuel Price immediately. Denise nodded and left the room with copies. Caleb lifted his head. His eyes were red now. Dad, he said, I can explain. I looked at my son, and the ache inside me felt older than my body. I hope you can, I said, but not before the truth gets its turn. Outside the frosted glass, the lobby buzzed with confusion. The ceremony was delayed. The investors were waiting. Rachel's perfect event was cracking open minute by minute. And inside that cold conference room, the version of me they tried to create on paper was meeting the man Grace had protected in ink. Samuel Price answered on the second ring. William put the call on speaker after asking my permission. I gave it with a nod, though hearing Samuel's voice filled me with an emotion I had not expected. Relief. Not the dramatic kind. The kind that comes when one honest person enters a room full of careful lies. This is Samuel Price, he said. Mr. Price, this is William Bradford, CEO of Bradford Hospitality Group. I'm here with Ethan Robinson at Robinson Grand. We are reviewing documents related to the Robinson Grand Legacy Trust. There was a pause. Then Samuel's voice changed. Is Ethan all right? 4 simple words. Not is the deal all right. Not is the hotel all right. Is Ethan all right? I looked down at the table because after all the polished cruelty of that morning, genuine concern nearly undid me. I'm here, Samuel, I said. Ethan, he replied, and I could hear both worry and anger beneath his professionalism. Tell me what happened. William answered before I could. That is what we are determining. I need to confirm whether Mr. Robinson has ever signed documents transferring decision-making authority over the trust to his son Caleb Robinson or daughter-in-law Rachel Robinson. No, Samuel said immediately. Caleb swallowed hard. William continued. Has Mr. Robinson ever been declared legally incapacitated? Absolutely not. Has any independent medical or legal review been conducted to support bypassing his consent number? And if someone has, represented otherwise, they are walking into very serious trouble. Rachel's mouth tightened. Samuel's voice grew colder. Is Caleb there? Caleb stared at the phone. I'm here, he said weakly. Samuel was silent for one heavy second. Caleb, I warned you after your mother's funeral that your father's authority was not ceremonial. Caleb whispered, I know. And I warned you that grief is not incapacity. Caleb had no answer. William looked at Denise Harper, who had returned with printed comparisons between the documents. She placed them in front of him. Denise said, We have a signature issue. Rachel stiffened. William muted the phone briefly. Explain. Denise pointed to the pages. The submitted representative packet includes an acknowledgement page, allegedly signed by Ethan Robinson, allowing Caleb Robinson to act as practical family liaison for the Bradford transition. I never signed that, I said. My voice came out lower than I expected. Denise nodded. The signature does not match the control signatures in Robinson 01 or the notarized documents Mr. Robinson brought. The E is different. The spacing is inconsistent. The pressure pattern appears copied or traced. Caleb looked like he might be sick. Rachel said, That is not proof of forgery. No, Denise replied. But it is enough to suspend reliance on the document pending forensic review. William unmuted the call. Mr. Price, were you aware of any acknowledgement signed by Ethan Robinson authorizing Caleb as liaison? No, Samuel said. Send it to my office immediately. And for the record, Ethan has been instructed for years not to sign anything related to Robinson Grand without my review. Rachel gave a bitter laugh. How convenient. Samuel heard her. Mrs. Robinson, is that you? Rachel lifted her chin. Yes. I suggest you stop speaking unless you have counsel present. For once, Rachel shut her mouth. William ended the call only after Samuel confirmed he was sending formal notice to preserve all records, emails, incident reports, camera footage, and financial documents tied to the attempted transition. The words preserve all records seemed to strike Rachel harder than anything else, because people who build lies depend on the past being editable. William turned to Denise. Pull the lobby footage. Rachel immediately stood. That is unnecessary. William did not look at her. Sit down. Her face flushed with humiliation. For a second, I saw what she had wanted me to feel in the lobby, powerless, exposed, corrected in front of others. But unlike Rachel, I took no pleasure in it. Pain had taught me something she had not learned yet. Humiliation may silence a person for a moment, but it does not make you right. The screen on the wall flickered to life. Security footage appeared from a high angle above the front desk. There I was, an old black man in a navy suit standing quietly at the marble counter. There was Rachel cream dress, bright under the chandelier. There was Caleb standing back. No one spoke as the footage played. We watched Rachel speak to Amanda, watched Amanda search the system, watched me gesture calmly. watched Rachel lean in with that soft, poisonous smile. Then came the moment. I reached toward the printed list. Rachel's hand struck mine. Even without sound, the violence of it was clear. My ring flashed against the marble. Amanda flinched. A guest turned. Caleb did not move. The room was silent. I did not look at my son. I watched the screen because somehow seeing it from the outside made it feel both less and more real. Less like something I had imagined, more like something I had survived. William's voice was quiet. Continue. The footage moved forward. Rachel spoke to Amanda. Amanda typed. Rachel signaled security. I stood still. I did not shout. I did not lunge. I did not behave like the unstable man described in the incident note. Then the screen showed me being escorted to the sitting area. Contained. Displayed. Documented. Denise looked down at the incident report, then back at the footage. The report is misleading. William's jaw tightened. It is more than misleading. Rachel snapped. There was no sound. You don't know what he said. Martha stepped forward. I was close enough to see him. He was calm. Rachel glared. You were not part of the conversation. Amanda's voice came from the doorway. I was. Everyone turned. The young receptionist stood there trembling. Her eyes were red, and her hands were clasped in front of her uniform. Rachel's face changed instantly. Amanda, go back to the desk. Amanda shook her head. William said, Come in. Amanda entered slowly, as if each step might cost her job. I entered the note because Mrs. Robinson told me. She said, Mr. Robinson didn't act unstable. He asked to see the list because his name wasn't there. He said his son invited him. Caleb covered his mouth with one hand. Rachel's voice went sharp. Amanda, you are confused. Amanda looked at me, then back at William. No, ma'am. I'm scared. That's different. Those words settled over the room. I felt something loosen inside me. Not happiness, not triumph. Recognition. Fear had been the silent employee in that lobby all along. Amanda feared Rachel. Martha feared losing her job. Caleb feared losing money and status. Rachel feared losing control. And I thought I had not admitted it had feared discovering that my son really was willing to sacrifice me. William stood. That is enough for now. Rachel stepped toward him. Mr. Bradford, we are delaying a major agreement based on emotion and incomplete information. No, William said. We are suspending a major agreement based on legal risk, contradictory documents, misleading incident reporting, possible trustee interference, and video evidence of misconduct. Rachel's lips parted. Caleb looked up. Suspending William turned to Denise. Notify all parties. The Bradford transition is frozen pending investigation. No signatures today. No ceremonial announcement. No management authority changes. No access to trust-controlled accounts or records without review. Rachel whispered, You can't do that. William looked at me. I believe Mr. Robinson can. Every eye turned toward me. For the first time all morning, the room did not see an old man to be managed. They saw the person Grace had made sure could still say no. I thought I would feel powerful in that moment. Instead, I felt tired. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of being spoken around. Tired of watching the boy I raised hide behind the woman who had struck me. Tired of needing legal documents to prove I deserved basic respect. But beneath the tiredness was something solid. I looked at William. I want everything paused, I said. Every agreement, every account connected to the trust, every document my son or Rachel submitted. Nothing moves until Samuel reviews it. William nodded. Done. Rachel turned to Caleb. Say something, she hissed. Caleb looked at her, then at me. For a moment, I thought he might finally choose truth. Instead, he said, Dad, please don't ruin my life. My heart broke in a quiet, final way. Not because he was afraid, because even then, he thought the life being ruined was his. I stood slowly. Caleb. I said you helped them write me out of my own mind. He flinched. You let your wife slap my hand in the lobby of a hotel your mother loved. His eyes filled with tears. And now you're asking me to worry about your life? He lowered his head. I picked up Grace's watch from my pocket and held it in my palm. She used to say, the truth doesn't destroy what's healthy. It only reveals what was already sick. No one spoke. Outside the conference room, the grand reception waited with untouched flowers, chilled champagne, and guests who had come to watch a celebration of power. But the real ceremony had already happened. A file had been opened. A lie had been interrupted. And the hand Rachel slapped away from the hotel desk now held the authority to stop everything. The reception outside did not end all at once. It unraveled. First came the whispers, then the confused glances toward the closed conference room, then the polite excuses from hotel staff who had been told to keep investors comfortable without explaining why the signing ceremony had suddenly vanished from the schedule. Through the frosted glass, I could see shadows moving in the lobby. People who had arrived expecting champagne and applause were now standing under chandeliers, checking watches, asking questions. No one wanted to answer. Rachel stood near the window, stiff as a statue. Caleb remained seated across from me, his face buried in his hands. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like if my son finally understood how badly he had hurt me. In my imagination, there was always some kind of release. Maybe tears, maybe an apology, maybe that deep exhale a parent gives when the child finally comes home emotionally, not just physically. But the real moment was uglier. Because Caleb was not grieving what he had done to me. He was grieving that it had failed. William Bradford stepped outside with Denise Harper to speak to legal counsel. Martha guided Amanda out gently, one hand on the young woman's shoulder. Rachel immediately tried to follow them, but William's assistant blocked the doorway and said, "Please remain here until Mr. Bradford returns." Rachel looked as if she might slap him too. Instead, she turned on Caleb. "This is your fault," she hissed. Caleb lifted his head. "My fault. You told me the old paperwork wouldn't matter. I told you Samuel was difficult. You told me your father wouldn't fight." Those words cut through the room. My father wouldn't fight. Not my father wouldn't be hurt. Not my father wouldn't be betrayed. Not my father wouldn't be humiliated. Wouldn't fight. That was what they had counted on. I looked at Caleb. "Is that what you thought of me?" He stood abruptly. "Dad, I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" He swallowed. "You're gentle. You always try to avoid conflict." Rachel let out a bitter laugh. "That's a polite way of saying he lets people walk over him?" I turned to her slowly. "You mistook restraint for permission." For once, Rachel had no quick answer. Caleb stepped toward me, but not too close. Maybe shame kept him back. Maybe fear. Maybe he had finally realized that the distance between us was not measured in feet anymore. "Dad," he said, lowering his voice. "We need to talk privately." I looked around the room. You had privacy for months. You used it to build a lie. His eyes filled again. "Please, just 5 minutes." I should have said no, but a father's heart is a stubborn thing. Even when it has been bruised, even when it knows better, it still listens for the child beneath the man. I nodded once. Rachel immediately stepped forward. "Absolutely not. Anything he says should be..." Rachel Caleb snapped. The sharpness of his voice startled all of us. She froze. Caleb looked at her, then at me. "Please." I stepped into the small side corridor outside the conference room. It was quiet there, with framed black and white photos of the hotel's early years lining the wall. One photograph showed Grace standing by the old front desk, smiling at a guest with both hands wrapped around a coffee mug. I stopped beneath it. Caleb followed and closed the door halfway behind him. For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at him. Those words had once been enough when he was a child. When he broke a window with a baseball. When he lied about a report card. when he came home late after prom. But some apologies arrive too small for the damage they are asked to cover. "What are you sorry for?" I asked. He blinked. What exactly are you sorry for?" He rubbed his face. "All of it. That is not an answer." He looked down the corridor. "I'm sorry Rachel slapped your hand." I waited. "I'm sorry the incident note happened." I waited. "I'm sorry the paperwork got messy." There it was. Messy. Not false, not cruel, not planned, messy. I felt something inside me close gently but firmly. "Caleb," I said, "you are still apologizing for consequences, not choices." He looked pained. "Dad, you don't understand the pressure I've been under." "Then explain it." He began pacing. The hotel was struggling in certain divisions. The luxury market changed. Investors wanted modernization. Rachel understood that world better than I did. Bradford hospitality was our best chance to make Robinson Grand nationally recognized. But every time we got close, legal kept bringing up trust restrictions, hardship room clauses. Your consent authority. It made us look unstable. Us, the business. The mission your mother built made you look unstable. He flinched. "That's not what I mean. It is what you said." Caleb's voice cracked. I was tired of being treated like the principal's son who inherited a charity project. I wanted people to respect me. I stared at him. For the first time, I saw not just greed, but shame. Old shame. The kind that begins quietly in childhood when a person decides ordinary love is not enough if it does not impress strangers. "You were ashamed of us," I said. His eyes lifted quickly. "No, you were ashamed of the hotel before it was grand. Ashamed of the free rooms. Ashamed of your mother's mission. Ashamed of me." Tears slipped down his face. I wanted more. "There is nothing wrong with wanting more," I said, "unless you decide the people who gave you everything are the things standing in your way." He pressed both hands to the back of his neck. Rachel pushed it. She said, "If we didn't act, you'd block the deal because you were too emotional about Mom. She said Samuel would manipulate you. She said we had to protect the future." "And what did you say?" He looked at me. I already knew the answer. He had said yes. Maybe not all at once. Maybe in pieces. Maybe with hesitation. But yes, all the same. "Dad," he whispered, "I never thought it would go this far." I looked toward the photograph of Grace. That is what people say when they helped push the stone and don't like where it landed. He covered his mouth, crying quietly now. A few hours earlier, those tears might have weakened me, but I had seen too much. "Were you going to use today against me?" I asked. His face crumpled. That was answer enough. I stepped closer. "You invited me here so Rachel could make me look confused." He said nothing. "You let her remove my name from the list." Silence. "You let her call me unstable." His shoulders shook. "And when she slapped my hand, you looked at the floor." He whispered I was scared. "Of Rachel." He shook his head. "Of losing everything." I nodded slowly. At least, that is finally honest. He reached for my arm, but I stepped back. The movement hurt him. I saw it. But I could not allow comfort to arrive before truth had finished speaking. "Dad, please don't cut me off." I looked into my son's face. "When did I stop being your father and become your obstacle?" He broke then, not elegantly, not quietly. He folded against the wall, one hand over his eyes, sobbing like the boy he had once been. But I did not reach for him. A parent can love a child and still refuse to rescue him from the first honest pain he has felt in years. "I don't know," he said. I believed him, and that made it worse. Because betrayal does not always begin with hatred. Sometimes it begins with small compromises, swallowed guilt, one ignored warning at a time, until a son can stand in a lobby and watch his father be humiliated while telling himself it is necessary. The conference room door opened behind us. William stood there. "Mr. Robinson," he said, "the board is ready." Caleb wiped his face quickly. I looked at him one last time before stepping away. "You want me to save your life from ruin," I said, "but you were willing to ruin mine on paper." He whispered, "I'm sorry." This time, I did not ask him what for. I just walked back toward the room where the truth was waiting. The main boardroom at Robinson Grand sat on the second floor overlooking the lobby through tall interior windows. I had not been inside that room in years. When Grace was alive, she disliked it. She said too many rooms like that made people forget there were human beings beneath the numbers. Still, she attended every important meeting, always sitting straight-backed with a yellow legal pad in front of her, asking the one question nobody in a suit wanted to answer. And how does this help the guest who has nowhere else to go? That was Grace's question. That was the question that built the soul of Robinson Grand. When I entered the boardroom behind William Bradford, every conversation stopped. The long table was filled with executives, board members, attorneys, and representatives from Bradford Hospitality. Some looked irritated. Some looked confused. A few looked nervous because they had already heard pieces of what had happened downstairs. Rachel entered behind me, her face controlled again. Caleb followed last, eyes red but posture stiff, trying to assemble whatever dignity he had left. William did not sit immediately. Neither did I. He stood at the head of the table and placed the Robinson 01 file in front of him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said before any partnership discussion continues, "there is a legal and governance matter that must be addressed." Rachel pulled out a chair. William looked at her. "Mrs. Robinson, please remain standing for now." The room shifted. Rachel's face flushed, but she obeyed. William turned toward me. "Mr. Ethan Robinson, please come forward." Hearing my full name in that room sent a strange ache through me. Not pride exactly. Something deeper. Recognition after erasure. I stepped beside him. William spoke clearly. "Mr. Ethan Robinson is the protected founding trustee of the Robinson Grand Legacy Trust. Under the original binding, trust documents no sale transfer, long-term management agreement, restructuring of trust-controlled assets, or alteration of the founding mission protections can proceed without his direct consent." Someone at the table whispered, "I thought Caleb held family authority." William looked toward Denise Harper. Denise stood with a folder. That was represented in submitted transition materials. Those materials are now under review due to inconsistencies, unsupported capacity claims, and signature concerns. A gray-haired board member frowned. "Capacity claims." Denise continued. "Documents submitted by Caleb Robinson characterized Mr. Ethan Robinson as emotionally unstable and unable to participate in complex decisions. We have found no valid independent medical or legal determination supporting that claim." Every eye moved to Caleb. My son stared straight ahead. Rachel stepped forward. "This is being exaggerated. We were trying to streamline a complicated process." I looked at her. "By declaring me unfit?" She did not answer me. She addressed the room instead. "Ethan has not participated in hotel management for years. Caleb has been carrying the practical burden. The Bradford agreement would have benefited everyone. William said benefit does not cure misconduct." Rachel's lips tightened. Another board member, a woman in a dark green blazer, leaned forward. "Mr. Robinson, did you know these documents had been submitted?" "No," I said. "Did you give permission for your son to act in your place?" "No." "Were you invited here today as part of the event?" I looked at Caleb. He swallowed. "Yes," I said. "My son invited me," Rachel quickly said informally. There was confusion. William pressed a remote. The screen at the end of the room lit up with still images from the lobby footage. There I was at the front desk. There, Rachel was hand-raised in the frame just before striking mine. Several people reacted visibly. William did not play the whole video at first. He let the still image sit there long enough for no one to pretend it was harmless. "This occurred less than 2 hours ago," he said. "After Mr. Robinson arrived, his name was not found on the event list. He asked to verify it." Mrs. Robinson struck his hand away from the desk. "An incident report was then entered describing him as agitated and unstable. Witness testimony and footage do not support that description." Rachel's voice shook with anger. He reached into a restricted area. The woman in the green blazer looked at the screen. "That does not justify striking him." Rachel turned red. I watched the room absorb what Rachel had done. In the lobby, people had stared because they saw an awkward family scene. Here, they saw liability, misconduct, and proof of character. It saddened me that law reached them faster than decency. William continued. "Effective immediately, Bradford Hospitality is suspending all partnership activity pending completion of an independent review." A sharp murmur ran through the room. Caleb whispered, "Oh God." William looked at the board. "Additionally, based on the protective provisions of Robinson 01, Mr. Robinson has requested a temporary freeze on trust-controlled accounts, transition documents, and management authority connected to the attempted agreement." One man near the end of the table objected. "That could disrupt operations." I spoke before William could. "Robinson Grand operated before this deal. It will operate after this meeting. What it will not do is move forward on documents used to erase my legal rights and my mental competence." The room went quiet. My voice was not loud, but it carried. I looked around at the faces before me. I do not enjoy this. I did not come here to embarrass anyone. I came because my son invited me, and because I believed foolishly, perhaps, that my family wanted to honor Grace's memory. I paused at her name. Instead, I was removed from the guest list. Publicly questioned, struck by my daughter-in-law, described as unstable, and asked to sit quietly while people discussed the future of a hotel my wife and I built from a place of service. Rachel looked away. Caleb's eyes filled again. I continued. "Grace Robinson did not create the trust because she loved paperwork. She created it because she understood something I did not want to believe. She understood that dreams can be stolen not only by strangers, but by people who know where you keep the keys." That sentence settled heavily over the room. William gave a small nod. Denise handed him another document. He read it, then looked toward Rachel. "Mrs. Robinson, pending investigation, you are to step away from all event management responsibilities connected to Bradford Hospitality Trust controlled operations and today's reception." Rachel's mouth opened. "You cannot remove me from my role." A board member quietly said, "We can place you on administrative leave." Rachel turned toward Caleb. "Say something." But Caleb did not. Not this time. William turned to him. "Mr. Caleb Robinson, your authority to represent the family in this matter is suspended pending legal review." Caleb closed his eyes. I expected to feel satisfaction. I did not. I felt the weight of years. The birthday parties, the graduations, the hospital visits, the family dinners, the prayers. All of it had led to this cold boardroom where my son's authority had to be suspended because he could not remember that I was his father before I was an obstacle. The woman in the green blazer looked at me. "Mr. Robinson, what do you want done next?" For a moment, I heard Grace's voice. "And how does this help the guest who has nowhere else to go?" I placed my hand on the table. "I want an independent investigation. Every document, every signature, every transfer, every dollar moved from funds protected under Grace's mission. I want Samuel Price included. I want Martha Lewis protected from retaliation. I want Amanda protected too." William nodded. "Agreed." Rachel whispered, "This is revenge." I looked at her. "No," I said. "If it were revenge, I would want you humiliated the way you tried to humiliate me." Her eyes flickered. I continued. "This is accountability. The difference is that revenge wants pain. Accountability wants truth." For the first time since she had slapped my hand, Rachel looked away from me first. The truth did not come out like a thunderclap. It came out like drawers opening, one after another. Emails, text messages, expense reports, draft letters, deleted notes recovered from internal systems, calendar invitations with vague titles, attachments labeled family transition capacity language and event risk plan. Each one seemed small by itself. Together, they built a staircase leading straight to betrayal. The investigation began that same afternoon. William assigned Denise Harper to coordinate with Samuel Price and an outside forensic accounting firm. The board postponed the reception indefinitely. Guests were told there had been a governance issue requiring immediate attention. Rachel hated that phrase. Governance issue. It was too clean to let her play victim, too serious to dismiss. Caleb and Rachel were separated into different rooms for questioning. I stayed in the small conference room with Martha. Someone brought me tea. I did not drink it. My hand had stopped throbbing, but my heart had not. Martha sat beside me quietly. She had always known how to offer comfort without smothering a person. Grace had loved that about her. She would be proud of you, Martha said. I looked at the table. I don't feel proud. What do you feel, tired? She nodded. Truth is tiring when it has been buried a long time. A little while later, Samuel Price arrived in person. He was 72 now, slower than he used to be, but his eyes were as sharp as ever behind his glasses. When he entered the room, I stood and he crossed to me without hesitation. He hugged me. Not a professional handshake, not a lawyer's nod. A hug that nearly broke me. I should have pushed harder, he said quietly. I replied, I should have listened sooner. Samuel pulled back and looked at me. Grace knew you would say that. She told me once, Ethan will always blame himself for trusting people. Remind him, trust is not the sin. Betrayal is. I closed my eyes. Even gone, Grace knew how to find me. Denise entered with a stack of printed documents and a tablet. We have preliminary findings, she said. Samuel sat beside me immediately. Denise took a breath. First, we found email correspondence between Rachel Robinson and Caleb Robinson discussing how to establish Mr. Robinson as a liability concern prior to today's event. My hands tightened. She read a line from one email. If Ethan gets emotional in public, Bradford will understand why Caleb needs clean authority. I looked at Samuel. He removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Denise continued. There is also a message from Rachel to Caleb saying, he won't fight you. He never does. Just keep saying you're worried about him. Martha whispered, Lord have mercy. I felt strangely still. Rachel had studied my gentleness, like a weakness in a contract. Denise looked uncomfortable, but continued. Caleb responded, I hate this, but we need the deal. Make it look clean. Make it look clean. Those words hurt more than Rachel's, because Rachel had wanted power. That was clear. But Caleb had known it was dirty. He had simply wanted the dirt hidden well enough to profit from it. Denise placed another document on the table. Second, we found irregular withdrawals and transfers from accounts connected to the property maintenance reserve. Some appear to have been used for event upgrades, private travel, luxury vendor payments, and personal debt obligations. Samuel's face hardened. Trust-protected funds, some may overlap with restricted categories. We are still tracing. I thought of Grace rooms closed quietly over the years. I thought of families turned away because rooms had been converted to premium suites. I thought of widows, patients' relatives, retired teachers, veterans, people Grace would have welcomed with both hands. And I thought of Rachel's cream dress, Caleb's expensive watch, the champagne waiting downstairs. Something hot rose in me then. Not wild anger, clean anger, the kind that knows exactly what has been violated. Denise hesitated. There is more. Samuel looked at her. Go on. She tapped the tablet and turned it toward me. A chain of messages appeared between Caleb and a real estate consultant. At first, I did not understand what I was seeing. Then I saw my home address. My little brick house in Cleveland. The porch with 2 rocking chairs. Grace's garden. The kitchen where her chair still faced mine. Denise spoke gently. We found preliminary discussion about liquidating or leveraging your residence after authority transferred. Caleb represented that you would likely move into assisted living or a family-managed residence. The room seemed to narrow. Martha covered her mouth. Samuel said something under his breath I had never heard him say in all the years I had known him. I stared at the address on the screen. They had planned to take my house too. Not immediately, perhaps. Not violently. Not with boxes thrown onto a lawn. People like Caleb and Rachel did not need to be crude. They had planned something smoother. A transition, a concern, a safer arrangement, a financial necessity. All those clean words again. I stood and walked to the window. Below us, the lobby looked smaller from the second floor. The marble desk gleamed under soft light. Guests were gone now. Staff moved quietly. Probably relieved the spectacle had ended, unaware that the real damage was still being discovered upstairs. My house. Grace's house. The place where I had held her hand during her final weeks when she was too weak to climb the stairs. The place where Caleb learned to ride his bike on the cracked driveway. The place where every wall carried some sound of our family before ambition made memory inconvenient. Samuel came to stand beside me. Ethan, he said softly, we will stop this. I nodded, but stopping it did not erase the fact that my son had considered it. That was the wound. Not only what they did, but what they were willing to imagine doing. A few minutes later, Caleb asked to see me again. Samuel advised against it. You do not owe him another private audience today. I know I said, but I agreed to see him with Samuel present. Caleb entered looking destroyed. His tie was loose, his face pale, his eyes swollen. He looked at Samuel, then at me. Dad. He said, I didn't know about the house. Samuel's voice cut in. Be precise, Caleb swallowed. I knew Rachel talked about options. I didn't think she would actually. I raised my hand. He stopped. That house is where your mother died, I said. His face crumpled. I know. No, Caleb, you remember. That is different from knowing. He wept then, but I felt my heart standing far away from his tears. You let someone discuss removing me from the last place your mother lived because you wanted a hotel deal. He shook his head. I was trying to fix everything. You were trying to own everything. He had no defense. I stepped closer, not to comfort him, but to make sure he heard me. I spent your childhood teaching you that a man is measured by what he protects when nobody is applauding. Today, I learned you protected your image, your wife's ambition, your access to money, and your pride. His lips trembled. But not me. He whispered, I'm sorry. This time, I believed he felt pain. But pain is not the same as repentance. Repentance tells the truth without being cornered. Repentance accepts consequences without asking the wounded person to soften them. Repentance does not arrive only after the file opens. Samuel led Caleb back out. Martha came to stand beside me again. What will you do? She asked. I looked at the magnolia painting, visible through the lobby window below. I don't know yet, I said, but that was not entirely true. I knew I would not let Grace's dream remain buried under marble and greed. I knew I would not let Caleb hide behind being my son. And I knew the next decision I made could not be about punishment alone. It had to be about restoration, because Grace had not protected me so I could become cruel. She had protected me so I could remain whole. Ket thuk fan mui ba, fan mui bon. By late afternoon, the sky outside Robinson Grand had turned the color of rain. The event flowers still stood in the ballroom, untouched and ridiculous. White roses, gold ribbons, crystal vases, all waiting for a celebration that would never happen. The champagne had been removed. The press backdrop had been taken down. Staff moved quietly through the hotel, speaking in low voices as if there had been a death. In a way, there had. The version of my family I had tried to believe in had died that day. But death is not always the end of a story. Sometimes it is the first honest moment. We gathered once more in the boardroom. William Bradford, Denise Harper, Samuel Price, Martha Lewis, several board members, Caleb, Rachel, and me. Rachel had regained some of her composure, but not her power. She sat with her hands folded, her face pale with anger. Caleb sat 2 seats away from her, no longer touching her, no longer looking to her, before every answer. That distance told me something. Not enough, but something. William opened the meeting. Based on preliminary findings, immediate protective actions are required. His voice was formal. Mine would not be. I stood before he could continue. I want to speak first. Samuel gave me a cautious look. I nodded to show him I understood. William stepped back. I placed both hands on the table. My right hand still showed faint redness where Rachel had struck me. I came here today because my son invited me, I began. I thought I was coming to honor my wife's memory. Instead, I discovered that her memory had been turned into decoration, while her mission was treated like an inconvenience. No one interrupted. I looked at Caleb. I discovered that my own son helped describe me as unstable so he could gain control over something he did not build alone and did not have the right to take. Caleb lowered his head. Then I looked at Rachel. I discovered that my daughter-in-law believed she could humiliate me in public, label me a problem, and remove me from the story of my own life. Rachel's jaw tightened. I did not ask for revenge today. I asked for truth. And now that truth is here, I will not insult Grace by pretending it doesn't require action. I turned toward William. Proceed. William nodded. Rachel Robinson is placed on immediate administrative suspension from all roles connected to Robinson. Grand Events Trust-related operations, internal records, guest data, vendor access, and partnership negotiations. Rachel stood. This is outrageous. Samuel calmly said, Sit down. She glared at him, but sat. William continued. Caleb Robinson's authority to represent family interests in any Robinson Grand matter is suspended pending completion of independent investigation. He is prohibited from initiating transactions, accessing trust-controlled accounts, directing staff on trust matters, or communicating with prospective partners as a family representative. Caleb whispered, I understand. Rachel turned toward him sharply, shocked that he had not objected. Denise spoke next. All financial activity involving maintenance reserves, mission-protected funds, event expenses, and family reimbursements from the past 5 years will be audited. A board member added, if misused funds are confirmed, recovery actions will follow. Rachel's face hardened. You are all acting like criminals are sitting here. I looked at her. Rachel, criminals rarely think the word applies to them. She stared at me with hatred then. Openly. Without polish. It was almost a relief. Masks are exhausting to watch. William turned to me. Mr. Robinson, as protected founding trustee, you may also issue mission directives while the governance review proceeds. This was the part that mattered most. I took the folded photograph from my jacket pocket, the old one. Grace and me in front of Robinson House before it became grand. I placed it on the table. Every eye dropped to it. This, I said, is what the hotel looked like before people learned to flatter it. Grace did not build it for chandeliers. She built it because she once saw a mother sleeping in a hospital chair because she could not afford a room. Martha wiped her eyes. I continued. When Robinson Grand became successful, Grace created a program called Grace Rooms. Some of you remember it. Some of you may have helped bury it under better revenue projections. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. I want it restored. William nodded slowly. Define the scope. Rooms reserved every month for people who need dignity more than luxury. Families of hospital patients, retired teachers, widows and widowers traveling alone. veterans, elderly people facing emergency displacement, people who would never walk through those doors because they assume a place like this has no mercy for them. My voice grew stronger. I want the fund audited and replenished if money was misused. I want Martha Lewis involved in designing the guest care policy because she remembers how Grace treated people. I want staff trained to understand that a worn coat does not mean a person is less worthy. I want a written policy that no guest family member, employee, or visitor is to be labeled unstable as a convenience for management. Amanda was not in the room, but I thought of her too. And I want protection for employees who tell the truth. William said, "Those directives can be drafted immediately." Rachel gave a bitter smile. "So, that's it? You're turning a luxury hotel into a charity case." I faced her. "No, I'm turning it back into a place with a soul." Her face twisted. "You'll destroy everything Caleb worked for." That made me turn to my son. "Caleb," I said, do you believe that?" He looked at Rachel, then at me. For once, he did not answer quickly. "No," he said finally. Rachel stared at him. He swallowed hard. "No." Mom would have wanted the rooms restored. Hearing him say mom instead of the mission or legacy hit me unexpectedly. It was the first time all day he sounded like someone who remembered Grace as a person, not an obstacle in a file. Rachel laughed under her breath. "Pathetic." Caleb closed his eyes, but he did not take it back. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said the thing I had been turning over in my heart since the conference room. "Caleb, you will not return to authority here because you cry. You will not return because you are my son. You will not return because you say Rachel pushed you." He nodded, tears rising again. "If you want any path back, not to power, but to yourself, it begins with truth. Full cooperation with the investigation. Financial restitution if required. No contact with trust documents except through counsel. Therapy? Real therapy, not public relations. And service." He looked confused. "Service? Yes. If after legal review there is any appropriate role for you here again, you begin at the bottom. Not in management, not in boardrooms, guest services, community outreach, carrying bags if necessary, listening to people your mother built this place to serve." Rachel looked disgusted. "You want to humiliate him?" "No," I said. "I want to humble him. There is a difference." Caleb wiped his face. "I'll do it," he whispered. Samuel leaned toward me. "Ethan, you don't have to decide his future today." "I'm not," I said. "I'm giving him the only door I'm willing to leave unlocked." Caleb looked at me then with something I had not seen in years. Not entitlement, not panic. Shame, yes. But beneath it, maybe the smallest beginning of understanding. Rachel stood suddenly. "You people can have your little moral performance. I'm done." William's assistant stepped to the door. "Mrs. Robinson Legal will contact you regarding your obligations to preserve records." She laughed, but it sounded thin. "Of course." Before leaving, she turned to me. "You think you won because they called you trustee?" I looked at my hand, then back at her. "No, Rachel. I won because when you slapped my hand, I did not become what you were." For once, she had nothing sharp enough to throw back. She walked out. The door closed behind her. Caleb did not follow. That did not heal everything. It did not erase what he had done. But it was the first right thing I had seen him choose all day. Outside, rain began tapping softly against the windows. Martha picked up the old photograph and smiled through tears. She really was something, she said. "Yes," I replied. Then I looked around the room, where power had almost buried kindness, and said, "Now let's make sure people remember why this hotel exists." I returned to Robinson Grand 4 months later on a rainy Tuesday morning. Not for a board emergency. Not for a legal review. Not because someone had tried to remove my name from a document. I came because Martha called and said, "Mr. Robinson, I think you should see it now." The drive felt different this time. The same streets, the same downtown traffic, the same tall buildings. But I was not driving toward humiliation anymore. I was not carrying Samuel's envelope like a shield against my own family. The envelope was still in my bag, but this time it did not feel like armor. It felt like history. When I pulled up beneath the covered entrance, a young valet opened my door with a smile. "Good morning, Mr. Robinson." I paused, not because I needed the title, but because I remembered what it felt like to stand in that same place and be treated as if my presence required explanation. "Good morning," I said. Inside the lobby looked almost the same at first glance. Marble floors, crystal lights, fresh flowers, soft piano music, guests moving with luggage and coffee cups. But something had changed. It was not in the furniture. It was in the air. The staff looked people in the eye. An older woman in a raincoat stood near the desk, struggling with a wet umbrella and a small suitcase. Before she could look embarrassed, a young employee stepped around the counter and said, "Let me help you with that, ma'am." No rush, no judgment, no polished impatience, just help. I stood near the entrance and watched. Martha appeared from behind a column wearing a navy blazer and the same warm eyes she had carried through every version of this hotel. "You're early," she said. "I'm old. We do that." She laughed and hugged me. That simple embrace in the lobby felt like Grace had opened a window. Martha led me toward the front desk. My steps slowed as we approached. That marble counter had lived in my memory for 4 months. Not because of the pain in my hand, though I had remembered that too, but because of what it represented. The place where Rachel tried to reduce me to a problem. The place where Caleb looked away. The place where my name was almost erased. Now a small framed message sat behind the counter angled toward staff rather than guests. "Every person who stands here carries a story we do not know. Treat them with dignity first." I read it twice. My throat tightened. Martha said softly, "Amanda suggested the wording." "Is she still here?" "She is, promoted to guest care coordinator." I smiled. "Good." Martha touched my arm. She wanted to apologize again. She already told the truth. That was enough. We took the elevator to the 7th floor. For years I had avoided that floor because it hurt too much. Grace had spent some of her final treatment days in the corner suite there when traveling back and forth from the hospital became too hard. She would sit by the window wrapped in a shawl pretending she was not in pain, so I would not worry. When the elevator doors opened, I had to steady myself. Martha waited without speaking. That is a gift some people have, knowing when silence is kinder than comfort. The door at the end of the hall no longer had a suite number. It had a brass plaque, the Grace Robinson Library. I covered my mouth with one hand. Martha unlocked the door and stepped aside. The room had been transformed, not into a shrine. Grace would have hated anything too dramatic. It was warm, useful, alive. Shelves lined one wall filled with books guests could borrow. A writing desk sat near the window. 2 comfortable chairs faced the city. On a side table rested a basket with tea tissues, notepads, and stamped envelopes for people who needed to write home. On the wall hung the old photograph of Grace and me in front of Robinson House. Beside it was a short story of how the hotel began not with investors, but with a woman who believed nobody should feel ashamed for needing shelter. I walked to the window. For a moment, I could almost see her reflection there. Grace in her cream shawl, Grace with the tired eyes and a stubborn smile. Grace telling me love needed paperwork because she knew one day paperwork might protect love from greed. Martha stood behind me. "The first Grace Room's guests checked in last week," she said. I turned. "A retired teacher from Dayton." She continued. "Her sister is having surgery at St. Anne's, a young mother from Kentucky whose little boy is in treatment, and a widower from Michigan who lost his wallet while traveling and was too proud to ask for help until Amanda sat with him." I closed my eyes. That was the hotel. Not the marble, not the name. That. What about the audit, I asked. Still ongoing, Martha said. But funds have already been restored to the mission account. Bradford stayed out of control, but William helped connect us with compliance specialists. The board is cooperating because Samuel scared them half to death. I laughed softly. Samuel enjoys that. And Caleb. The question hung between us. I looked back out at the rain. Caleb had written me 3 letters. The first was full of apologies that still sounded too much like explanations. I did not answer it. The second was shorter. He admitted he had lied. He admitted he had let Rachel use his shame as a weapon. He admitted he had wanted the hotel more than he wanted to protect me. I read that one twice. The third letter arrived a week before my visit. No excuses, no request for money, no mention of authority. Just a page in my son's handwriting saying he had started therapy, was cooperating with Samuel, and had volunteered twice at a hospital lodging program outside the city because he was not ready to come back to Grace Rooms and pretend he deserved to serve there yet. At the end, he wrote, "I do not expect you to trust me soon." I just wanted to tell the truth without asking it to buy me anything. That was the first line that sounded like repentance, not full healing, not yet, but perhaps a seed. I don't know what will happen with Caleb, I told Martha. I love him, but love does not mean giving him keys to every room he once tried to lock me out of. Martha nodded. That sounds wise. It sounds painful. Wisdom usually does. We stayed in Grace's library for nearly an hour. Before leaving, I placed her pocket watch on the writing desk for a moment. Not to leave it there forever, just to let it rest in the room she had earned. Then I returned to the lobby. The rain had softened the light outside. Guests came and went. A child laughed near the elevators. Amanda waved to me from across the desk, shy but smiling. I walked to the marble counter. Slowly, I placed my right hand on the exact place where Rachel had slapped it away. No one stopped me. No one told me I did not belong. No one called me confused. My ring touched the marble gently this time. I thought the memory would hurt more. But standing there, I realized the place no longer held only humiliation. It held the moment the lie failed. It held Amanda's courage, Martha's loyalty, Samuel's warning, Grace's protection. My own decision not to become cruel, just because cruelty had found me. I looked toward the magnolia painting on the far wall. Grace had once told me beauty was not a luxury when people were suffering. She was right. But dignity is not a luxury either. Neither is truth. Neither is respect for the old, the quiet, the grieving, the gentle, the people who do not announce their power when they enter a room. I smiled then, not because everything was fixed. Some things would never be what they were. But because I had survived the day my family tried to make me invisible. And in the end, the file they feared did more than prove my authority. It reminded me of who I was before they tried to make me forget. Life has a way of testing gentle people in rooms where everyone mistakes kindness for weakness. Ethan Robinson did not win because he shouted the loudest. He did not win because he hated harder, struck back faster, or embarrassed his family more cruelly than they embarrassed him. He won because he stayed rooted in the truth when other people tried to dress lies in the language of concern. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are not strangers. Sometimes they are the ones who know our history, our soft places, our grief, and our willingness to forgive. They know where the keys are kept. They know what words will make us doubt ourselves. They know how to make betrayal sound like responsibility. But family should never be used as a weapon. Being older does not mean being useless. Being quiet does not mean being confused. Wearing an old suit, driving an old car, or carrying grief in your eyes does not mean you have no power. Some people carry their strength silently because life has taught them that dignity does not need applause. Ethan's story reminds us that forgiveness and boundaries can exist in the same heart. You can love someone and still refuse to hand them the keys again. You can hope they change and still protect yourself while they prove it. You can choose not to become bitter without pretending the wound never happened. And sometimes justice does not arrive with shouting. Sometimes it arrives as an old file, a loyal witness, a hidden signature, a camera recording, and one quiet person finally saying, "No more." If this story touched you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated, betrayed, or made to feel invisible by someone close to you? What would you have done if you were in Ethan's place? And if you're watching right now, comment where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more emotional stories about family truth, betrayal, and the quiet strength of people who refuse to be erased.